So in Subdivision XSI we have three distinct different topology types. Let's just have a look at these. First of all, we have the Polygon Mesh. Let's grab ourselves a grid here and just simplify this a little bit for the sake of demonstration. Okay, so a polygon object is defined of vertices, which we have here, which then in turn are connected to give edges, which then in turn define polygons. Now XSI can deal with polygons regardless of how many points define them. So if we have a polygon with 3 points, so a triangle here, that's fine, or a quadrilateral, or an n-gon with many points. They'll all be able to use the same tool sets, the same properties, and be able to be turned into subdivision surfaces, for example. Okay, the second type of surface or topology that we have is the NURB surface. So let's just grab ourselves a NURB grid right here, and you'll see, okay, so I now can't actually go in and grab the surface squares here because a NURB surface is defined by mathematical points. Now, the benefit of this is that it's mathematically very precise and easy to model organic shapes, as opposed to the polygonal object, which has very angular shapes, because obviously it's points and edges creating it, and surfaces, i.e. the polygons. Now, the problem with NURBs is, although they create very organic shapes, it's very hard to combine or create a shape out of one NURBS grid, obviously, and NURBs are required to be square. So what we need then is another extension of this topology type, which is a patchwork of several NURB surfaces. So if we're going to, for example, create a character or maybe a complex shape like an airplane or something like that, we need to stitch many different NURB surfaces together in order to create the shape. And we do this, and what it's called is then a surface mesh. So if we go to surface mesh, assemble, we're just going to take these two grids that I have here, and it will stitch them together to create a single topology, which I can then go in here and grab each of the submeshes individually, called subsurfaces here. I'll go into this more later in the modeling section on NURBs. Now finally then we have a third type. Now, as we saw, the polygonal objects are not fantastic for creating organic shapes because you need a lot of detail putting them into, whereas NURB surfaces may be a little bit harder to model with because you can't actually go in and access the surface, and you're adding a lot of detail maybe where it's not necessary. So the third type, what we have is subdivision surfaces. Now subdivision surfaces are taking a polygonal hull and creating a smooth surface using that. So if I turn on Polymesh Hull, you'll see that on the outside I have this polygonal hull, my original object. On the inside I have my subdivision surface. Now in Subdivision XSI, it's completely irrelevant whether this is a subdivision surface or a polygon object in terms of the tools and the operators that we can use on it. So for example, I can use my polygonal tool set to model on a subdivision surface. I can also turn off the polygonal hull on the outside and just model directly on the subdivision surface in terms of actual seeing what I'm doing and modeling really on the object itself. So another advantage I have is right now it's simplifying the subdivision mesh so as to not show the refinement that it's putting on. But if I want that turned on, I can simply go under my display options, here we go, and show simplified subdivision wireframe. Just simply turn that off, and now it'll show you the actual geometry from the subdivision surface that it's generating. We actually have several different methods of creating a subdivision surface, or several different algorithms. If we go in here and we simply go to Polygon Mesh Subdivision, we can simply define, let's just grab this to the side here, which algorithm we'll be using. For example, Catmull-Clark, or maybe a XSI du Sabin, or maybe a linear, or a du Sabin on the old fashion, which is just in there for compatibility reasons. But what you can see is that these different algorithms create a slightly different look. Maybe one is a little bit smoother, one is a little bit more angular, and one is of course completely angular, just doing a linear subdivide on it. The advantage of this is that you can then define the look that you want very much by just simply the algorithm that you run. The real advantage, however, of subdivision surfaces is that we can take any polygonal object, regardless of how many triangles or quads or n-gons it has, and quickly turn it into a subdivision surface and back again into a polygonal object, just with the plus and minus keys on your number pad. Or, of course, going into the geometry approximation here and just upping this slider. The other advantage is that you can work at two different levels of subdivision, one for your rendering and one for your OpenGL display. So you can have a very high res mesh during render time, but a fairly low res mesh for actual interaction with it. So those were the three main topology types in Subdivision XSI, and now we'll go into a little bit more detail on each one of those in terms of modeling.